How's it going, everyone? This is Preflight here, and I wanted to do a little introduction to this hour-long video. One of my subscribers, Piano Addict, was asking me if there was any chance I could do a lesson with him, and I thought, why not? I thought that would be a lot of fun. So this was kind of like a test run of a lesson that we decided to do. I had said that if you subscribe to me for the $25 a month thing, you'd get a lesson hour long with me for that month. It went off super well. This is pretty much raw, uncut footage. There are some little edits every once in a while, but I thought it went over really well, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. I think this is something that we can do with pretty much anyone. So from now on, if you do subscribe to me for $25, or if you just donate the money, you'll get an hour-long lesson with me for that month. It was very raw and uncut footage, and I left it in there mostly so that you guys can see my technique when I teach, and I'm very blunt and I'm very honest with the people so that I can fit your needs. So if you guys are really interested, you like this video, please come out to my Twitch stream and maybe we can do the same thing for you. I appreciate you guys watching that, and stay tuned for more. Cool, we're going. Sweet.
Hello, Preflight.
What's up? So this is the first lesson that I'm doing here for the channel. So I think the way that we're gonna start this out, and then your name is Piano Addict, aka Ryan, right?
What's up?
So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is if you had any specific questions before like we dive into what you really want to, I guess, take away from this whole thing. If you had anything specific you wanted to ask, or anything of that nature.
How do you warm up?
How do I warm up? It's a good question. The number one thing I do is I'll take a random song that I either know or don't know, just depending on how I feel that day, I guess, and I'll play it as a ballad and take my time. So for an example, and it doesn't matter what the song is. It doesn't matter if the song is normally a ballad or not, but let me pick a random song in this book that I use, which, by the way, everyone should get a real book because they are super useful at for learning. There you go. Okay, so I use this song a lot, actually. It's called Have You Met Miss Jones? And it goes like normally it goes about this fast. Right, it goes about that fast. So what I would do if I haven't played the piano at all that day is I will just look at the chords, look at the notes, and just kind of take it slow and just at my own pace move on to each measure, which is actually a really good way to practice new songs too. Don't think about it in time or in rhythm, and just kind of go like. And not only does that help ingrain the song in your head and warm up, it helps with quite a few things. One, it helps with independence of hands, because if I'm taking it slow like that, I can add inner lines and things to help develop the song, because if I just played it it's not as interesting as if I were adding secondary melodies and stuff in between, and it gives you that time to add that stuff, and it also gives you time to add in chords you want to add in. So the chords for that song, at least for that first part, are F major, F sharp diminished, G major or G minor, C7, right? Which is right. And it'll give me the sometimes it'll give me ideas to add in other things and replace things with other chords and stuff, or add extensions on chords that I wouldn't normally add. And so I usually will warm up by playing 2 or 3 songs and just doing them that way. And then I usually play a blues. I don't know why, but for me personally, blues brings out creativity because it's so restrictive on what you're supposed to do, because it's so you play a 1 chord, you play a 4 chord, 1 5 1, and then 4 5 1, usually something of that nature. And so it allows you to like really add in interesting things, and you can also play it fast or slow depending again how warmed up you feel. So that's pretty much what I do. I don't really do scales or anything like that anymore. I probably should. I don't. I would say if you're new to the piano, then yeah, but like, if you're used to it, you kind of know what you need to do if you have to do scales and stuff. But so
I probably should practice my scales more. I mean, I know like major, minor, some modes and shit, but I don't practice the modes or anything.
Do you know like whole tone scales?
Well, yeah, like, but I'm not like good at like fingering it correctly because I'm not exactly sure.
Right. Yeah,
what...
that was always confusing too. It's like that aspect of piano I always used to hate as a kid is like how to properly like play certain things. So
yeah, right. Like yes, I don't know, like if you had like a particular song that would be good to start out learning for jazz, or
yeah, actually I have a couple. So you know the basic format of like a blues, I assume, right?
Like, I've heard blues songs. That's right. About it. Like I know what blues sounds like, but I don't know the technicalities of it.
Okay, so there's 3 different types of blueses based off of how many measures long it is. There's 8 bars, 12 bars, and 16 bars. Mm-hmm. And 12 is the most common by far. And as an example of a 12-bar blues, what will normally happen is the first 4 measures are 1 chord. So E flat major. The 5th and 6th measure will be a 4 chord. So that would be A flat.
Yeah.
And then the 7th and 8th measure will be E flat again. And then what typically happens for the last 4 measures is the first of the last 4, so that would be the 9th measure, would be a 5 chord. And then it would be, which would be B flat in this case. The next measure would be the 4 chord, which would be A flat. And then the second to last measure would be E flat, and the last measure would be B flat again. So it would sound something like this. And then people from there would add on different chords and stuff like that. But what I'm using there, in terms of the chord, is just the 3 and the 7 of the chord. So for E flat major, that would be G and D flat. And that's it. That's the only notes I'm playing. And then I'm walking a bass line, but like I'm strictly playing those 2 things.
So when you're walking that bass line, are you just doing like specific intervals in the chord that you're trying to do? So like in the first...
To be honest, it's kind of random because I have certain lines that I just know, like this one. I just know that will eventually equal. Yeah. I'm just going down chromatically. And a lot of the times, if there's a bunch of chords in a measure, I will just find the half step before the next chord. So like for an example, I was doing this, which those are all just half steps leading to the next one. And that's like one of the most popular like blues bass lines right there. Right.
Interesting.
Which is the 1 chord, which is E flat, going down to C, and C would be the 6th chord. And then F minor, which is the 2 chord. Then B flat, which is the 5 chord. And then back up to... So, essentially, the nice thing, too, about playing just the 3 and the 7 is everything is really condensed and close. So, if you watch, like, my right hand, when I'm going to play that again, my right hand does not move very much at all. And that's a good thing because, especially when you decide to solo, you don't want to be bouncing all over the place to find certain, what you're most comfortable with, essentially, because it will.
The more your wrists are moving, the more prone you are to make mistakes as well, starting off especially.
That's true. Right, exactly. So that's why another big thing with jazz is learning different sorts of ways of playing certain chords. So like an E flat 7 chord is E flat, G, B flat, and then D flat, right? And that D flat is what gives it the blues feel, right? Now you can build off of that chord and you can add in the 9th, which is F. You can add in A, not A flat, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then C, which is the 13, and then if you went back up, it'd be E flat again. So, and because all chords are built in thirds, and what you do is you build the chord based off of whatever scale you're in, and that's the easiest way to build chords. So if you're in E flat major, you would build the chord E flat, G, B flat. And I'll explain the A in a minute, why it's not A flat in a minute. Right. So those are all the notes that work with an E flat major chord. So if you want to start with scales, all those notes. All those notes will work with that chord. The reason why we use D flat instead of D natural is because in the blues, that's what gives it the blues sound. That's a 5 chord.
It's a melodic instead of harmonic, where like this would be like a melodic A7.
Right. And that's right. And that A7 or that A flat major chord with the 7th in it. This or what were you playing?
That was E flat, my bad.
Gotcha. Yeah, so this is E flat major, and that's a 1 chord. It's a major chord. But this, for the blues, is actually defined as a 5 chord. And the reason why is because you have... Because it resolves to a major chord. That will resolve to A flat major. Right?
Yeah.
Right, so you can hear that. But we're treating we're treating that blues chord though as the main chord in the song. So even though we're treating that as the main chord in the song, that chord is a 5 chord in A flat major, which means we have to use the scale of A flat major, which means D flat is involved. Because if you played A flat major scale, D flat's in it.
Yeah.
So when building chords, you take whatever scale or whatever like major or minor scale is being interpreted, and you use that scale. Now, the reason why I said not to use A flat is because that clashes with G, and the reason why that's a bad thing is because G is the 3rd of the chord, which determines whether the chord is major or minor, and that's like the most important chord or note in the chord. Right, and it sounds like if I played.
Sounds like G.
Yeah, and like you can't. If there's one thing in music in general, there are some exceptions which we can go over long way into the future. But like one thing that's important when it comes to music is the chord has to be minor or major, pretty much. So if you do anything that kind of messes with that, it gets really it not only gets confusing, it just sounds bad. It doesn't sound good to the ear. So you raise it to A natural. And then that's when you hear sharp 11 chords. Like, I'm sure you've heard chords that sound like this. Like, let me think. Probably heard something like that before. Like, maybe a song ends that way. Like, that's a sharp 11 chord. And
A sharp 11?
Just a sharp 11. So they're taking A flat, which is the 11th note It's the 4 too. You can think of it as the 4 as well. But in the way that you build chords, it's the 11th, and you're raising it to an A, and adding that.
Interesting.
So because we're doing that, it sounds better with the G, and it has even more of a bluesy sound. So when it comes to 5 chords, that's one of the like things you could do to alter the chord. But that's just the basics of like how chords are built and all that stuff, and how you can go from there. Anyways, so that's the 1 chord. The next chord that we would play is the 4 chord, which is A flat 7, which would be right, and then back to E flat.
Which inversion are you playing this in? Do you normally try to stick to first inversion with like the root and the bass, or
I
chords on the right hand?
I almost never do like a first inversion chord, but I know what you're saying, but like because you can play jazz chords pretty much like with 2 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes, even 5, there's so many different inversions that it doesn't really apply. But the best thing to learn is pretty much all of them. So like what I was doing was walking a bass line.
The best thing to do is just learn it all.
Yeah. It's just to play this. And so I'll play that again, like the whole blues, and just watch my right hand, and it barely moves because the notes that the chords that I'm playing, I've changed the inversion of them so that they're really close together. So
yeah.
I never like moved from this spot in the keyboard, which is like 7 notes, because you don't really have to move that much, because when it comes to the blues, the chords are actually pretty condensed. What I did for the first 2 chords, which were E flat and A flat, is I just went down a half step from, I played this note, which is the 3 and the 7 of E flat. Right, and then I just went down a half step. Right,
which
and
is
then you still have
7.
Right, and then you still have the 7th of the chord, which is that G flat, and the 3rd of the chord, which is C.
Yeah.
Do you see
so
it?
Still, you get the major.
Right.
You don't really need the 5th.
Well, I mean, this is like if you want to play as little as possible, and you're kind of just in the background at that point comping, or like you don't want to get too elaborate just yet, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
instead of going like playing this and then jumping up to, I could just Then the other chord that I was playing was the B flat 7 chord, which is the 5 chord. And if you take E flat, the E flat major chord, and you go up a half step this time, and play B flat in the bass, that's a B flat 7 chord.
Oh my god, that's so simple.
Yeah. And then you slide down a half step. So you have your 1, your 4, and your 5 chord all right there.
That's wow.
Yeah. And then the other chords that you'll use a lot are the 6 and the 2, which are C7 and F minor. So C7 from E flat is, you would play most likely the B flat and the E, like this.
B flat and E?
Yeah. Right. The reason why is because that's this chord progression that. Right. And the other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the times chords are altered to make them sound better or make them sound more interesting. So a common altered chord is a flat 9 chord, which basically, if you were playing a C7, would be right. And if I wanted to add the 9, that's D.
Yeah.
Like that. Let's see. Right. Well, a common thing that they'll do is they'll take that D natural and lower it.
That sounds like it really wants to resolve.
Right. And that's a reason why people will alter chords. They'll go. So they'll do that.
Oh.
Right?
That's
so
tasty.
If I did that in this blues scenario, and I was doing the... I actually don't even have to move the upper note. I just have to go... Which, my hand was in the way, but...
Oh, God. So the B...
You take this, and then you would just move the G down to E.
Oh, wait, what?
So, take that E flat 7 chord, which is just E flat, and then G and D flat, right?
Yeah.
And then just take the G and bring it down to E, and then play C. Right. And that is, you have the third, which is that E, and then you have the flat 9, which is D flat. And all I did was move one note. So, right? And then the next chord you'd play is an F minor chord.
Okay.
Which, for that, you can just play A flat and C. Right? And then just move the C to a D for the B flat chord.
Oh.
Right. And then... Right. So... I think you played
that last part.
You played the D on the F minor chord.
Oh wait, what's this supposed to be?
That would be
A
C,
flat and
A flat and C, because you're basically just playing an F minor chord. Right. And you know, you don't have to do it like the bass notes that I'm playing don't have to be exactly what I'm playing, because one thing you'll find out quickly is nothing is precise or exact or written out. So and there's so many different things you could do with that. Like in that chord, you add E up top, E flat up top.
yeah.
Right? The next chord is, well, what I'm playing is this, which that's the full version of the C7 altered chord, which we'll get into at some point, but it's yeah. And then
C7 altered? Is that when you take the 9 and the flat 9, or?
Right, that's one alteration. The other one is where you take the 9 and you raise it, and then you take the 13 or the, I guess you can also call it the 6, and lower it. So that's another alteration that you can do, which we'll get into alterations and stuff at some point. That's like a whole nother thing. But that way, if I do that, if I just add a few extensions to the chords, it sounds like this. And then it sounds a little more melodic, and it also is adding
Yeah.
more than just the simple. So I'm adding a little bit more to it. And
Okay.
then eventually, you know, you can do other stuff like, you know. But and essentially that's how you play like a 12-bar blues. It's just that is focus on playing the 3 and the 7 of each chord, and you basically need to know 3 chords: the 1, the 4, and the 5. And you can play it in any scale pretty much indefinitely. So one of my favorite blues is in E flat, and it's called Sand Dew. And I probably played it on stream. You may have even seen me play it on stream, but it goes like. And each blues has like some weird something at the end or sometimes at the beginning. So the weird thing with this is it has a B flat like pedal.
Yeah.
So that's just a thing that's a tag at the end. But as long as you know the melody to a blues, you can pretty much play any blues if you just know to play certain chords, because they're all so similar.
Thanks for picking the easiest scale to learn. E flat. It's just black keys with a couple white ones thrown in. It's just
it is. Easy. Well, if you want to do something like C, you know.
Oh God, let's do like B or something.
Well, the one song I wanted to work on was Watermelon Man. I don't know if you know that song.
Yeah, that's a good man. Or that's a good song. Herbie Hancock.
That's an example of a 16-bar blues.
In F?
I'm playing F and then C and E flat, and then it goes to B flat and D.
So just okay.
Right. So the reason why that's a 16-bar blues is because pretty much everything's just extended. So the first 4 bars are all F7 because the song is in F. The song is based around the F7 chord. The next 4 bars, 2 of them are B flat, 2 of them are F7, and then the next set of 4 bars alternates between C7 and B flat 7. And then the last 4 bars are all F7. So that's an example of a 16-bar phrase. So F7 for the first 4, B flat 7 for the next 2, and then F7 for the next 2.
Okay.
So if we were using what we were doing before with the other blues,
3-7.
Right. So 3-7 for F for these chords would be what?
It'd be F and then A and then what was it? E flat.
Right. And then if I wanted to go up to B flat, which would be the 4 chord, what notes would I play at that point?
If it's just B flat, then probably B in the bass and then B, D, and maybe F if you're gonna throw that in there as well.
Well, an easy way to slide down from here is to slide just down a half step for both to A flat and D, because then you have the 7 and the 3.
Yeah.
So, right.
Okay.
And then if I wanted to go to C7, which is the 5, what's the quickest way to do that?
Up a hole.
To what?
B flat, and I wanted to say E, but would it be E minor or E flat or
no? It'd
E
be
flat
E.
or F?
It'd be E.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I
Yep.
wanted to say E, but for some reason I thought that would be wrong.
No, no. Well, if you were thinking E flat, you're thinking that I'm saying C minor, but I'm not. One quick way to tell like what a chord is defined as: if the chord says major, it's a 1 chord. Like if it says C major and like C major in numbers, it's a major 1 chord, no matter what. Pretty much no matter what. If it says C minor and then numbers, it's a 2 chord, or it's in a minor key. But if it says like C and then numbers and it doesn't define if it's major or minor, it's a 5 chord. So that means that it's going to have a major 3 in it.
So we're doing something in F. If it's just like C6/4 or something.
C6
or like C7 or
yeah, anything that says C7 or C9 or C13 or B flat set, that's always a 5 chord, which means it's going to have that B flat in it, or if it was, whatever. It's going to have that bluesy 7th in it. So for those what do you call them? The middle 4 measures there, where it goes right, you could just slide down a half step for those. Right, and then you can get to B flat.
How do you, so like when we're going from B flat 7 and then we're trying to go back to the F, back to F, I'm just like trying to figure out the rhythms and the correct way to like shift chords and like move in between them.
Don't worry about the rhythm of it, really. It's more important that you kind of like see how we're moving than it is to get the rhythms right. I'm just adding in like, don't worry about that. Just as long as we get from
okay, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you're adding a couple other notes in the bass to
kind
of fill in the yeah. Okay, I got
it. Because we're playing it in time, but like one thing I would suggest is if you're ever learning a new song, don't play it in time. Just basically like go play one measure and then look at the next measure, look at it completely, and then play that measure, and then so on and so forth. So like if I was learning a new song in the real book, I would take the first measure, I'd see the chord and the melody, and I'd play it at my own pace. Add, if you want to add notes to fill in time so it doesn't seem like you're, dawdling or whatever, sure. And then when you feel like you're ready to play the next chord and it's going to sound good, play the next chord and move on. But
so the format for this song, first 4 bars are in F7, then the 5 through 9 are C to B.
It's
C7 to B flat 7.
It's B flat to F, and it's 5 through 8. 5 through 8. It's B flat 7 to F. So here I'll play it real quick.
Yeah.
So that was 1 through 8.
Okay.
And I only did that one shift up to B flat for 2 measures and then back down to F. And then 9 through 12 is C to B flat. So
off with F.
Right. And actually,
And
the
then-
F7 is only the last 2 bars. You just do that. You do that C7 to B flat 7 for 6 bars. Which is like
Okay,
that's
so-
how the technical thing of what like the technical breakdown of Watermelon Man kind of goes.
So if I'm, this is what's getting me, is if I'm like trying to notate this on paper,
Right.
would the key, like if I'm trying to write this like Watermelon song and I'm playing like F7s and shit, is the key, like the key signature supposed to be B flat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The reason why is because, well, there's a couple reasons, but one of the main ones is because it's an F7 chord and it's a 5 chord, you're basically playing it in B flat.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's the main chord, it's a 5 chord, you have to think of it as if you're in B flat. You're not. So you could also think of it as a mode. You can think of it as like F Lydian. Or is it Lydian? I think it is Lydian.
Don't ask me. Don't.
I think it's Lydian. You can think of it that way too, or you could just think of it as you're playing it in B flat because it's a 5 chord, and what is F, the 5 of B flat? Or another way to think of it is build an F7 chord, like in thirds.
Wait.
You could even play the B flat. It's fine just for this purpose. Right.
Interesting.
So we made the 11 sharp, but normally it would, well, right. So if it was B flat though, the key signature right there is B flat major because
Yeah.
right? We're just sharping
So
B because of the clash.
Huh.
But all those notes are in the scale of B flat major. So that's another way to think of it. But I always think of it as what does it resolve to? It's the 5 of B flat, so we're in B flat major.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
it's like circle of fifths just straight on the piano.
yeah, I mean that's really what it is. I mean
circle of fourths, whatever one you want to use.
Well, the circle of fifths is like super important in jazz, and there's a lot of weird substitutions with chords that you can do that affect it in a crazy way. Yeah, there it is.
I'm just gonna fucking pull it out since.
Okay, so something we haven't talked about yet, because I wanted to do this before, like at the end, is soloing. So
Yeah.
we're in a blues, right? So like obviously one of the things that you could do is a blues scale in this situation, right? Which do you know like the blues scale off the top of your head for F? Like if you
F major. No. I don't. Okay, apparently I don't.
So it would be
Okay.
and that's just the only thing I can tell you is that's just how blues scales are. Is they're just
Okay.
so that's one thing you can use that works with pretty much all of those chords.
Okay.
So like
So
obviously F. And a lot of times what
Jesus,
people will
dude.
do what people will
don't make it look too hard, dude.
what people will do is slide that A flat that I'm playing up to regular A because it is technically an F major chord. And sometimes that can clash. But it's kind of up to you. That's more of a personal thing. I don't do that too often because I like it sounding like that. Or what some people will do is they'll just take the chord and alter it, which you can do too, and make it sound like this. And then it doesn't clash anymore because I'm using an altered chord. But for the sake of
so
this...
it's like it sounds like it's clashing, but it's really just a sharp 13.
Yeah. And there's a lot of... The other thing with jazz, like one of the first things my teacher told me is like I did classical for years and years and years, and then I did jazz for like a year and didn't really understand it until I went off to college and like had time to sit down and listen to it. But one of the first things my one teacher had told me was he played a C major chord with a sharp 11 in it, and he played it like, and he said, "Do you hear that sharp 11? Do you hear that sounds good?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You got to give it like a year, it'll sound good." And I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?" And it's actually true, because at first that sounded awful. I'm like, why does F sharp work? This is just like straight up C major. So like C, like with a B, like straight up C major chord. So I'm just building the chord in C major, but adding an F sharp instead of an F natural. Right. And it sounded weird to me at first too. I'm like, this doesn't sound right. But
well, when you just go like, does this sound good? And you're like, no.
Yeah.
But like when you actually fucking play around with it, it's like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Yeah, that's cool.
So I'll add in stuff like that if I was in C major and I was going.
Oh, dude.
So like,
stop.
Adding that in, it doesn't sound as bad. But if it was just a regular F natural, it doesn't sound quite as like, there's something almost off with it if I held on to that like, note for too long.
Yeah. You just try and like put it in a passing, like putting it as a passing tone or something?
All I'll do is I'll just I almost never will play it. It just doesn't sound right to me. Now, again, a lot of soloing is personal preference and like what you think sounds good. So what I'm showing you is just the blues scale for F, which works that just works with all of those notes. Now, another thing that works with all those notes is just if you play the B flat major scale, you know. Now, the only difference with that is with certain chords, certain notes don't work. So, as an example, if we're playing the B flat 7 chord, okay, A is not going to work. A flat will. Reason being is because it has A flat in the chord, so A is not going to sound good. You got to play.
Yeah.
One other thing,
but you can make it.
Go ahead.
You can make a D flat work if it's an alteration. Is what you mean? Like you can't really make A work because it's just like you're not doing.
You're clashing with the 7.
B.
Right. Yeah, you're clashing with the 7. Essentially,
you're not playing in B. You're playing in D or.
You're now playing in E flat because
E flat.
The B flat 7 chord is the 5 chord of E flat. So now if you play the E flat major chord or scale, it works there too. Same thing for C7. C7, E flat's not going to work anymore, but E will. So that works. Yep. So there's a couple of notes that just work and don't work if you're not using the blues scale. The blues scale pretty much works with all of them. Like, it's so hard for me to like restrict myself from adding in weird stuff, but yeah, like there's certain things that will work and certain things that won't, but it's pretty free. Another thing that you can do that people will do quite often is go up a half step from the scale you're playing and then just resolve back down a half step. So for an example,
the fucking replacements or what is it called? So
Substitutions.
instead of like substitutions, that's it.
Yeah.
Those sound so fucking good.
So
So like if you're playing in like B7 and then you use maybe like an E major to substitute, or would you do since you're playing in E flat, would you do like and resolve back to E, or you're trying to resolve back to B, right?
which chord are you talking about to start with? Like
So if we're doing B, like we're doing B7,
B7 or B flat, you mean, right?
or B flat, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
B flat
if you
7.
went up to like B major, which sounds weird, but if you think about B major, like B major is this, right? Literally every single one of those notes, if you go up or down a half step, will resolve to B flat. Every single one. B resolves up or down. D flat resolves up or down. E flat resolves down. E resolves up or down. Like, every note resolves up or down to B flat. You just have to know which ones they are. So, like, if I was doing, like... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, as long as I resolve it, or I go, I do it either with the chord or with the next chord, it'll make sense and it'll sound good. For the F7 chord, if you went down to E major for a little bit, you gotta like.
Ooh.
You got to make sure you resolve it, or else it's just not going to sound good. But like,
It's just like, oh, what do you do?
yeah, exactly. But you kind of get the idea. C7, you could do the same thing. And the other nice thing is that if you're ever worried that, like, oh, the next chord is coming up, remember that most of the notes that work with F7 work with B flat 7 and work with C7 and work with, those. So if you're ever worried about, like, I'm about to resolve this lick that I'm doing, but I'm not sure if it's going to work, it will most likely work unless you alter the chord in some way. So that's always a possibility. So trying to think of what else you can do. Well, a lot of times in blues you could do whole tone scales.
Yeah. I was hearing that before when we were doing like, it just sounded like when we were playing an E, or we're doing F7, and then it was like this.
Oh,
yeah, and then but like we were doing B7 and then like C.
This?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use it there. Yeah. You can also, that F7 chord actually works out really well. The reason why is if I built up F7 again, okay, all of those notes work, right? Like that's, right? And I'm making the sharp 11 there. Well, D is not that important of a note. It's the 13. It's like the highest extension it can possibly go, right? If we decide to lower that, you can play the whole tone scale because you'd have.
Got it.
So I could do something like.
Dude, you're breaking my brain.
And actually, C7 and B flat 7 would have the same whole tone scale. There's only two whole tone scales. There's only the one that has two black keys and the one that has three black keys. That's the only the only ones. But they work there too, especially with sharp 11 chords, because more often than not, sharp 11 chords leave like one note that doesn't work with the whole tone scale left, and that's like the most obscure note that nobody cares about, so it'll work.
Yeah.
So that's another possibility too. Another one is like the augmented scale or diminished scale, which you could use those. They're fine. Like as an example, on that C7 chord, the diminished scale would be
Yeah.
and what that is those are 8 notes, and it's just comprised of 2 diminished chords. So it's like, and it's just those notes that were comprised of those, and then there's also, because as you probably know, there's only 3 diminished chords that you can play as well, and then you go into different inversions. Right? There's this one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And this one, and then if I go up a half step again, it's the same one as before. It's just that it's been moved.
A different inversion, yeah.
Right.
That's interesting.
So there's only 3 diminished scales. And then there's augmented scales, and then there's weird stuff like...
Stop.
Which is... We have to get into that stuff. It's really weird. There's
I thought you were trying to teach me.
There's just really
weird stuff. Trying to make me
stuff.
put my piano away? Just like, I'm fucking done. Just...
There's really weird stuff. I mean, that's only if...
No, but it's really interesting. It's like there's so many like different scales and shit you can play in, but like it's really just like 2 sides of the same coin, you know?
Yeah.
You got like, it's super simple. Like, I don't know why people, you just have to know like how to practice it, you know?
That's the important thing, is how to practice it. And the other thing that I should mention is listening to what other people do with blueses is also a big deal. However, one thing that I will tell you that most people will tell you the opposite of what I'm about to say, but I'm very firm believer in this. Do not copy other people. Most people will tell you to, like most jazz players, I've been asked to say this, is to copy what they're doing and understand it and use their lines and their licks and what they're saying. I think that's horrible. I think you should learn what they're doing and analyze it and figure out what they're doing, but don't copy them ever. You come up with your own thing. Like,
I've watched your stream. You're able to hear like any song and just like deconstruct it and like hear not just like the rhythms and like shit that they're doing in the chords, but like the whole like picture, like where this chord is moving to, and you're like,
right.
I feel like at some point like you realize like what's happening in the whole song, and like you don't even need to listen to the whole thing. Like, you know, it's like it's a 16 melody, or like it's a ballad in 16 blues, and like you don't even need to know, like you hear the first like 2 measures or like the first like 5 measures and you already know the whole song.
Yeah, well, that's also just because when some people send me stuff, I can almost tell like, all right, this is probably going to be this, or it's probably going to be that. But yeah, I mean, a huge deal of it is just sometimes songs are just like, there's only so much you can do, and at some point you kind of figure it all out. I mean, it took years for me to get to that point, but like at some point you kind of realize, well, this chord moves here, it has to go here, it has to go here. And every once in a while I get thrown off if like a chord doesn't resolve the way I'm expecting it to, and then I usually just kind of decide like, okay, maybe it resolves here, goes here. But when it comes to what we're talking about, yeah, I mean, there's really weird shit out there, but we don't have to get into any of that stuff.
Yeah. So like, you think I should just like look up songs and find like the ballad versions, like say like Watermelon Man, just like play that song as a ballad and just deconstruct it and play it as well as I can?
I would, yeah, that's exactly what I would do. Something that can't be taught is like how you feel the rhythm of the music. Like being able to swing is not really something that's taught. You just have to kind of feel it. So I always think of that as, don't sit down and like try to practice how to swing. You just will feel it as you learn how to actually play the song. But sitting down and learning it in ballad form and being able to express yourself in that way, and getting the time and the freedom, because the hardest thing for somebody that's like thrown into the fire with jazz is,
oh my god, this song is going so fast. Even it could be the slowest song. It could be going like 60 beats per thing or whatever the hell it is.
Measure.
60 beats per measure, and like they'll think it's the slowest thing because they're not used to the song. They don't know what inversions to play, and so I just say don't worry about any of that. Just sit down and play it, and when you feel comfortable, move to the next one, and then play it in time once you start to feel comfortable that way. So I would take Watermelon Man, and if I've never played it before, I would think of it as, I maybe play that chord, or I go. And then maybe I'd add
like an altered chord there.
Yeah, I just went up a half step. That's all I really did.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then I'll add a melody to it. I'll do something like. I'll just take it slowly and think about it, and when I feel comfortable to move on to the next chord, I will. And as long as what I'm playing there is going to resolve, then do it. But if you don't think it's going to resolve, don't do it. Take your time with it and really sit down and play it. But getting it to the point where you're playing like... That's just going to happen once you learn the song in that way, I think. I personally think.
Yeah, but you're saying don't just listen to Herbie Hancock play Watermelon Man and copy like exactly like the rhythms and everything. Yeah, like don't copy it. Like take the chords, figure them out, and like make shit up on your own. Like feel your own rhythm, Make it your own.
And feel it for yourself and understand what they're doing for sure.
Yeah.
But literally like transcribing it and copying it, I think is more harmful than good, just because of It makes it like, oh, I don't have to do this myself. I can just kind of do what he's doing because why not? I know.
Like the stupidest thing is like a lot of the like the interesting things that come out of jazz are actually mistakes. Like the artists, like when they're playing it live, it's just like they were trying to go for this like particular chord. Maybe they hit like a passing tone. Like it's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but that sounds cool. And then people are like, oh, I got to transcribe that. It was so cool. How did he do that? It's just like it just happened like in the moment. It's not like
I get asked that all the
just,
time.
Like
they're like, what did you just play there? I'm like, I don't know. I gotta hold on. Let me listen back to it.
You like pull up a clip, like figure out, like I don't know. Like when you're writing those melodies, are you just like I don't know, like you're finding like the 3/7 or like the 5/1, and you're doing like intervals to passing tones. So like or like chromatic steps up to like that note for the next measure, so that it like the note, like if you're going for an A, and so like you want to land on that A on like the downbeat, are you just like kind of like if you were to like deconstruct the way that you write your melodies or just like play your melodies in time, are you just kind of like finding those like intervals that work with the chord, or do you just like know the scales so well that you don't even have to think about it?
I guess it's a little of both. What I try to do is what most people try to do, and that's have peaks and valleys throughout the solo. So a lot of the times I'll start off with something somewhat simple or like a repetitive rhythm that's like people can remember. I'm not gonna like go. It makes no sense to do that, like out of time weird crap. But like I'll start off with something simple and like something, and then honestly, to be completely honest, I kind of just see where my fingers go and just kind of follow. I mean, the toughest part for me is I've always had like not great technique, and I would always tell people like, if you have not great technique, fix it. Don't do what I'm doing and not fix it, because I usually have ideas in my head that I can't physically do because my technique's not good enough. So I'm working on it, but like it's not good enough. Like It's never.
Do you
been
like finger? Did you like figure out all the fingering and technique just by like ear and just trial and error, or is there like a specific way to learn the correct positioning for your hand in a specific scale?
There is. I learned it trial and error, and mine is probably horrible because you'll probably see on my stream a lot of the times I'll do stuff like almost like freaking
It's like where
Thelonious
you going
Monk,
with that?
because I'll do weird stuff like that every once in a while.
Yeah.
If I'm like either, well, it's not that I'm not paying attention. I'm almost like too focused on like where it's going that I won't care about the fingering anymore, or like it'll just fall apart. But there are definitely specific ways to do it and specific licks that are common, like this one. It goes like. That's a super common lick. Like, which that's just that's a like
Nice.
that's used a lot.
Are you like? And you're just like trying to use all your fingers in like the most efficient way.
Yeah,
So,
essentially, I'm just. And it also
Like, I
a lot
see-
of times, if I don't
I
hit
see
the
you
notes
like
I
using
want,
like thumb and ring a lot. Like even though like you could be like switching to like your pinky for that.
right?
You're
Yeah,
just,
and that's
just doing what's comfortable.
that's just a fault with me, probably. Like, and a lot of the times, if I mess up that line, like if I'm doing a lot, like if I don't usually think about my solos in terms of lines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of people do. I don't. And if you do, that's awesome. But I just don't. I don't think of it
No.
like, okay, I'm gonna play this line. Now I'm gonna play this line. Now I'm gonna play. It's just like, I sometimes describe my soloing as like I'm just vomiting. Like I can't help it. It just is all like it's coming and I don't know how to stop it. It's just happening. Like I have no thought process in it. It's like pure improvisation. When I mean I'm improv. I have no clue. But some people will have lines in their head, and if sometimes that will happen to me, I'll like, oh, I want to play that. And if I mess that up, I use that as an opportunity to do something weird. So if I went like, you know, something like that, like I'll use like I messed up, and I'll use that to get back to it in a weird way. And
Nice.
by doing it out of time, it's like if I was. It gives me a chance to figure that out instead of like being thrown into the fire and it's like, oh, I didn't get a chance to fix that kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Just as long as you don't hit F sharp, you're good.
and even that works. I mean, like I said.
Yeah.
Because that could be, you can use like a Phrygian scale or something weird.
Yeah. As long as you're like epic at jazz, like it works.
It's hilarious how I realized after like 6 years of playing jazz that like every note works with every chord. You just have to know how to alter it and how to get around it. But every note works. Like nothing's off limits as long as it doesn't sound like completely terrible. And
Did
it's
you
like
use the circle? Did you like use the circles a lot when you were learning, like picking it up?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, just so that
like,
I can understand what's going on, like.
Like I can see it, like I can see what's going on. It's just like I don't know how to take this and apply it to like my practice.
Right.
Like I got C, G, D, A, E, and then like F, B flat, E flat, A flat, and then D flat, G flat, C flat, and then like all of the relations with like minors and shit. It's just like it's really hard for me to like take this, like it's just like everything is here.
Yeah.
It's like how do I even like just focus on like one scale and like.
Well, one thing that I would pray along with blues, another thing that I think is extremely important is there's a very common chord progression in jazz, and it's the 2-5-1 chord progression, which is first thing I ever got taught was that, which is just 2-5-1 in a certain key. I would practice doing those in any inversion that you feel comfortable in for every single scale and learn them. Because I can do that for every single scale and with 2, 3, 4 notes and in any inversion I want. So like I can
Nice.
go.
Fuck yeah.
Um,
That's okay. That really helps. Because then you're hitting like every single note in the scale with those 3 chords.
yeah,
Because
you
the
are
2, you're hitting the 7, you're hitting 5. You know.
right. And again, you can start with as simple as just, and then, you know, and go
throw
from
some
there.
alterations in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and just start like
That's
that,
awesome.
or start with something even as like just. And sometimes I'm using 2, 3, 4 notes, and it's just kind of like how
Yeah.
I feel at the time or how it fits. So,
Yeah. So like when I was taught to do like scales, like you like say C, like you just do.
Right.
You know, like
And that's a chord progression.
1 4 1 5 1.
Right.
So like if you're trying to practice like a jazz scale, you could do like an F, like do like the scale, play the scale, play 1 4 5, and then do like 1 2 5 1.
You could do something like or so, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or something
Yeah.
of that nature. But usually what I'll do is just like I was doing there. It's just I'll pick an inversion that I haven't practiced in a while and just go. And obviously I'm adding
Nice.
a bunch of extensions to it and stuff, but you can start off in whatever you want and just learn how to play them and basically get your hand to feel that shape.
Were you just like stepping down a whole step for every different scale? Like going from F to E flat?
Yeah. So what I was doing was I was playing 2 F 5 B flat 1 E flat. And then I made E flat 2 5 1.
Okay.
And then
yeah.
2 5 1 2 5 1. And continue and so on and so forth.
So you're just stepping through the whole tone scale.
I mean, I guess I am. Well, sorta.
No, that's a good way to do it though, because then you can start say at F, and then like step down, and then from here like step, like through the other way.
Right.
Just like
yeah,
hit them all.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, if that's how you think of it, then I would think of it that way from now on.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then, so you have an idea of what I'm talking about here. The 2 chord's always minor, F minor, and then the 5 chord it's got that 7 in it, and then 1 to E flat.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it sounds like.
Nice.
Like that. And then there's
cool.
also 2 5 1s in minor, which are a little different. They are like.
Ooh.
Which those are a little different. We'll get into that some other time. But the major ones are more important, I would say.
And lesson number 2.
yeah, really. So, all right. Well, do you have any other questions you want to ask me here before we sign off of this?
What are you doing for Christmas?
What am I doing for Christmas? Well, usually what we do is, my brother is like 9 years older than me, so he lives out by himself. So we all come gather to my parents, open gifts, and then we go to my cousin's that lives like 40 minutes away, and then we all get together and do that sort of thing. What are you doing?
That's awesome. I have a really fucking big family.
Do you?
And yeah, like my immediate family alone, there's like 20 of us. That's
Holy
just brothers,
shit.
sisters, brothers-in-laws. Well, 20. Wait. Not 20. I think it's 17. That's including brothers-in-laws, my parents, and nieces and nephews.
Dang.
There's just like and like my dad's one of 15 and my mom's one of 8.
Oh,
So
Jesus. I have
like
4
a
people.
shit ton of family.
I have 4
Yeah,
people
my
in my
family's
immediate
enormous.
family. It's me, my parents, and my brother. And my brother's my half brother, technically. We're not even like, we're half related. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's
fucking
awesome, though.
fucking Irish Catholics, man.
Irish cat. Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So this will be great, I think, for a video on YouTube to show people kind of what we're doing. So
Yeah.
one more time.
You better post it because I definitely forgot to record it.
Yeah, of course.
like
As
shit.
long as the audio just like decided not to get corrupt or anything.
Don't say that shit.
So we got one more time Brian, aka Piano Addict here, and I am Preflight,
That's
and
me.
that'll be it. See you guys.
Yeah.